Anyway, before we start today, I do want to thank the community for sponsoring this, because obviously they are aware that I have been basically working on this almost non-stop since what am I even trying to say? Since the whole shenanigans has started. Yes, that is what I'm trying to say. Shenanigans. And yeah, like I don't know. I am rather thankful to them for essentially forcing me to take a break away from the shenanigans. What I'm perhaps not quite as thankful for is the fact that that instead of like giving me an actual break, that we would or rather I would be forced to actually talk about said shenanigans, right? And so it's just like, guys, come on. But yes, we shall. I can't quite remember exactly what build I wanted to go with, so we'll just go with the heart. Oh right, I remember what I wanted to do. This chick, I can't remember her name, but she gains like reload speed and firing rate whenever she gets hit after you take the skill, of course. And so obviously that'll make it fantastic for her to for us to play a multi-hit thing with her. Anyway, so let's talk real quick about Silicon Valley Bank, because obviously I have to. The FDIC obviously took it over. It was almost basically during our broadcast, right? It's just fantastic, right? Like the fact that I remember towards the end of the broadcast, our last drink was from one of our boys who I said he would have to deal with like the shenanigans yesterday. And basically immediately started having to deal with the shenanigans, right? And so it's just like, yeah, I suppose you're welcome. But anyway, so what happened? The bank obviously broke. How did it break? Let's talk real quick about it. You will all remember that I subscribed to something, or I literally came up with it. I came up with this idea of the so-called Federal Reserve supercycle. That is what I've coined it. Oh, I did that wrong. I ran into a tree. Yes, the Federal Reserve supercycle, right? Essentially, this idea that since the Great Recession in 2008, the world has been on this cycle of low interest rates, right? And because of that, I'm gonna try a bullet in this build, even though it's completely ridiculous. And because of that, because of the Federal Reserve supercycle, interest rates were super low. And this was especially triply so at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, where every central bank essentially doubled down on their that's probably not a good idea. Doubled down on their stimulus plans, because there was no fiscal ability for modern Western countries to actually stimulate their economies any further. And I should have taken the reload rate actually. What that means is that in the early well, maybe not even 2020, but between 2019 and 2021, early 2021, or actually even mid to late 2021. I'll take this. Between 2019 and basically late 2021, when the interest rates changed, there was zero interest rates anywhere, right? Like you couldn't really do like if you were a bank, you really didn't have a lot of places to park your people's money, and that was terrible, right? Like as a bank, that's literally the worst thing you can do, because how do you make money? Well, as a bank, you make money by taking deposits from people and investing it in such a way that you get more interest rate back, right? That's I mean, that's how a bank works. Um, and so for normal banks, you would expect them to invest in or to lend things to things like mortgages and stuff, and that's sort of fine most of the time. If you lend mortgages and you find that your mortgages they tend to be fine, right? Because they tend to be uncorrelated to interest rates themselves. Like someone who took out a mortgage in 2020 isn't going to immediately want to refinance that mortgage when interest rates change, because in fact when interest rates rise, they're even more happy with their bullet damage and bullet size. No, that's not good. Well, too late. So when they take damage, no. when interest rates change, they're actually happy, because usually in the US we do things via fixed rate mortgages, which means that actually they are better off when interest rates rise. But that is not what happens to startups and tech companies, right? Remember, I talked about crypto and the modern tech industry as being super dependent on this Fed source. And so when that when something like interest rates happens, the rise in interest rates makes money expensive, and that essentially makes tech expensive. And so even today there's the poem here. I'm not gonna live through this. Like even today we saw that my boy Mark has decided that he needs to fire more people, right? And that's sort of just part and parcel of what happens when tech is when interest rates are go into this prolonged period of annoyance. And I'm just gonna ignore that. Anyway, the point I'm laboriously trying to get to, and that I'm not being allowed to actually get to, is that Silicon Valley Bank was a bank that served startups, that served tech startups, and therefore it was doubly exposed to it, right? Like, it was doubly exposed for sort of additional reasons that we will have to get into, but I can't actually do right now because I need to survive this. Perhaps I should have gone for the pet build, yes. Well, because honestly, like the pet build is just OP at sort of like even low tech levels, like what we are at right now. Ouch. And I'm not healing, so obviously like I'm not gaining bullet damage or bullet size or anything. So like that was super worthless, and I'm not getting any experience because I kept after running away from my experience. Oh. Yeah, this isn't gonna work out that well. Anyway, so anyway, I was saying, it's a Silicon Valley Bank, because it's a bank, it has to put its deposits to work to make money, right? And the only real way it had in 2011 and 2000 and let's say at least prior to this year, or no, prior to 2022, was oh ouch. Okay, let's yeah, so we'll retry this. Actually, will we retry this? Do I want to do this? Yeah, you know what? We'll try this again. So in 20 prior to 2022, the only places where it could get money and get a return on its investments was long dated bonds, and those things lose money when interest rates rise, essentially, right? Because when interest rates rise, you are you borrowed on really low interest rates on those bonds, and so when interest rates rise, you are essentially losing money because now those bonds are worth less because the interest they pay is less than, say, for example, treasuries, right? You'll remember that one of my biggest suggestions for this year has been to park it at treasuries because you can get what, like 4% on that, and honestly, what more do you really need? Genuinely, like 4%, right? 4. Can you imagine, like 5 years ago, if you could get 4% at just like at something as safe as treasuries? That's ridiculous. Anyway, the and so the problem was because when Silicon Valley Bank had all of that money, it needed to park it somewhere. And when it had all of that money, it didn't have anywhere good to park it. Right? And yeah, that's a tragedy. Absolutely. I'll agree 100% with that. Right? It didn't have anywhere to park it. And so because it didn't have anywhere to park it, it parked it in long dated bonds. And those things disappear, like the value of those things disappear when interest rates go up, and simultaneously the amount of money that tech startups make also goes down when interest rates go up, right? Because obviously they stop being able to borrow money, and so therefore they stop being able to generate money, and therefore they start taking money out of their bank to pay for things, right? Like because obviously when interest rates were low, they could find money basically anywhere, right? Like you guys will remember some of the ridiculous stories. You guys have heard some of the ridiculous stories I've talked about in being able to find funding. That's no longer the case, and so when Silicon Valley Bank needed money, unfortunately, it bought it bought those long-term debt in ways that made it really difficult to preserve its value. Even though its business is probably fine. The way that the banking industry works in the US is that if you drop below a certain amount of ratio, you are just considered in trouble. And when you're considered in trouble, people pull out their money from your bank because it's a bank run. And whenever that happens, well then your bank is toasty, right? like there's no better way of putting it. So that's what happened to Silicon Valley Bank. There is no conspiracy behind it because nobody really made money from that. Well, I mean, except for the short sellers, obviously. But the short sellers, like, the short sellers have other issues because obviously those shares are in trading, right? So how can they actually get those shares back so that they can actually they can actually make the money that is on their books? That is a totally different issue, and that is an issue that doesn't really concern me, and I really don't care about, right? Like, those guys are on their own. I have no sympathy for them. But anyway, the point remains, right? Do I get the every time you heal again? I wonder if that's random. Because if that's not random, that would be quite annoying. Anyway, what was I saying? Right. The point. The fact is, whenever you do that, so like Silicon Valley Bank, its money was not lost to someone who gained it per se, right? Because here's the point. I'll type this out. If you bought a pile of dirt 3 years ago for a high value, and someone came out and, or no, if you bought an NFT 2 years ago at the height of the NFT pricing, and its value crashes because nobody has money to buy your NFTs again, then you didn't exactly get ripped off per se, right? Let's be very clear about that, because oh, that's not even a great example. No, I need to change to a different example. What example shall we use? Say you bought not shares, gold. Actually, let's just go with gold. Okay, we'll just use gold. You bought gold a few 2 years ago, and on the idea that gold would preserve its value, but someone suddenly discovered a huge new gold mine, which means that suddenly all the gold that you had doesn't quite have as much value as it did before. Then it's not that you got ripped off by anyone, right? Like that's not how that works. There is no conspiracy in ripping you off to steal your money. That's just nature, right? Like that's just the natural discovery process. And this is exactly the same thing. When Silicon Valley Bank bought its long-term interest rate products, it bought them in such a way that it would be exposed to we'll do more freezing. Maybe I should have it bought them in such a way that it would have exposed to silliness. And it's unfortunate, but it's like, what at the time when it bought them, it did the correct thing. And that's what galls me the most about, like conspiracy theorists, or or just like people who don't understand the situation. Like, because genuinely, at the point when it bought those things, it genuinely did the correct thing. There was no money anywhere else for it, and there was no other place for it to park its money, right? And and that's what makes it also tragic, because obviously, like, these are ouch. These are issues that could have been avoided if we were able to deal with, like, if we didn't depend on monetary policy to solve all of our problems, right? And this is stuff I've talked about over and over again. So that's why it's doubly galling to me, because obviously, like, I called this, right? Like there's no other way of saying that. I did in fact call this on hit. Well, is it my fault? No, I don't think so. Excuse me. Fire rate, spread, bullet damage, knockback. Move speed. Do I want this? No, I don't want this. I just want more experience. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So. Yeah, so to summarize, right? Like, obviously, we're not in a good position. We haven't been, and I would argue that I'm probably actually one of the lucky ones, because my issues are not even that big. It's just that there's a lot of them, compared to some of the other blokes who are probably suffering just a little bit more than I am, right? Like. Yeah. Yeah. The spears have basically shown their use, but I'm trying to not do spears here. I know. But no, you're right. I should be exceedingly grateful for our boys and girls for sponsoring this, because obviously, like, they know that this entire thing has overworked me quite quite bad, and so yeah. No, and no, I am grateful. I am grateful. I am not an ingrate. Okay, excuse me. Excuse me. I do need some different upgrades, because otherwise I'm not going to survive this much longer. Oh, no. There we go. Like I just need the core of this girl's upgrade so that I can actually do stuff, right? Like, we'll do this. Oh, we should have done the pet thing anyway. Ow. That's okay. We did get the 80% health when hit thing, so that makes being hit actually one of the most important things that we can do for this build. Right, so like that. But of course we still can't get hit too badly because we don't have that many soul hearts, and I desperately need more of these. Excuse me. Oh my god, these upgrades are terrible. Well, yeah, I desperately need better upgrades, but we don't get them, so we are just gonna. Let's see. I'll take this one. Like, I need better reload rate for sure. No, that's not how life works. I'll take bullet speed. This is actually quite aggravating, given that sort of where we're so close to, like, making this build viable. I'll take arrow magic. No, she doesn't have any extras yet. Oh. Sure. Well, if I die, then that's fine, right? Because I do have to get back to work as well. How long have we taken? 24 minutes. Yeah. We're okay still. We're okay. We're still alive. We got this. Let's see. Bullet speed, bullet damage, piercing. 15% as well. Everything. Soul heart. Like, we're still fairly powerful. It's just that we need more bullets, right? We need better ammunition, and we're not getting that. Well, it's because I'm not getting the upgrades I need. Like, for example, all of these are great, but they're not really super helpful at the moment. Such is life, isn't it? Such is life. Anyway, I can talk a little bit about what I have to do on my end. Yes. So essentially the things I have to do is making sure that people get paid, because right now the money is locked, right? When the bank goes into administration, obviously like the money isn't strictly usable at the moment, and so right now that's an issue. Um, well, aside from that, we have to figure out how to get the money that is technically ours. Obviously, deposit insurance is one thing, but like how many companies have deposit insurance on the amount of money that they have, right? Like that's not how that works, because deposit insurance is very much a consumer issue. For every damn HP you currently have, fantastic. That'll dramatically well, that should theoretically increase the revenue that they do. Yes, and ideally when this mini boss dies, I should get the thing that I want, which is every time you get hit. Nope. See, I feel like this is because this build depends on getting that, and not getting it 2 times in a row means that we are just kind of very, 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 very badly off. Well, actually, you know what? That is not a bad comparison, because that is strictly true, right? Like, as I've sort of explained, if Silicon Valley Bank had access to better interest rate products, it wouldn't be in this current predicament. So you might be tempted to ask, why didn't they do that in as things went to hell in 2022? And the answer is because they were locked in, right? Like it's not that they didn't want to; it's that the products that they bought had to be held to maturity. Otherwise, you don't get the money back. And so when you're unable to do that, when you have to sell ahead of time, ahead of maturity, then you do something which is there are complicated accounting reasons why the bank failed, and that's sort of my underlying point. The money hasn't disappeared. I completely forgot. I completely forgot to make this point. Underlying point. The money has not disappeared. If Silicon Valley Bank is allowed to hold all of its money to maturity, all of its bonds to maturity, then absolutely it could pay back everyone. But the problem is not that the problem that is not the problem. The problem is that it has a long-term asset, but short-term. Why is it not working so well today? Well, it doesn't matter. It has long-term blah 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 assets and short-term debt, right? So people want their money today, but Silicon Valley Bank is unable to give them their money today because their money is locked into long-term debt, right? I think that should speak for itself. Their money is locked into long-term debt, and therefore, one second, I do need to put this in underlying point. Yeah, their money is locked in for long term, and therefore that mismatch. The reason the company is not doing well is because of that mismatch of because of the fact that its long-term assets are running into short-term debt issues, right? So the money is still there. It's just that they couldn't get the money out without losing some of it because of interest rate issues, right? So you could imagine if someone comes and says, I will buy all of those interest rate things for and exchange them at their face value, which means that you get $1 for $1, right? If someone is kind-hearted enough to do that, then absolutely the bank could very well continue. But of course, that's a money-losing proposition in this environment, especially given that we talked about jobs numbers yesterday, and we talked about unemployment and jobs numbers going up at the same time, which means that the lower end of the jobs market continues to expand, right? So interest rates are not coming down. So nobody wants to pay that much for that debt, which is the problem in the first place, which is why they, when they sold some of those bonds, they had to sell them at a loss to pay back their debtors, right? And so all of this then contributes to the fact that uh, well, it's just one gigantic death spiral, really, right? And so here we are today, and here I am, and we'll deal with it when we deal with it. Is that tautological enough for you lot? Anyway, so that's what this is. That's what today was. I should say it's tautological. What more do you want? Right? Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for sponsoring. Why? Hold on. I wonder why this is. Oh, okay. Because there's no room. Okay. Okay. So this should make my voice sound a little bit loud. No, it doesn't. That's really strange. Oh, I just realized that there are setting differences between and I do apologize for this, that there are setting differences between YouTube, between OBS going to YouTube and OBS going to Twitch, which is weird. Anyway, that's not important. Thank you very much for watching. In conclusion, please download Firefox, please don't do Chrome, and I shall see all of you tomorrow. Probably, if I'm still alive. And that's a big if I'm still alive. Bye now.